Hello to everyone and welcome to Radio Juxtapoz, produced by the Unibrow. This episode of Radio Juxtapoz with Sydney, Australia's Mark Whalen is brought to you by the generous support of the Artemisia Foundation, a world-class museum of contemporary graffiti and street art in Bisbee, Arizona. The Artemisia Foundation features over 1,000 works of art by 125 artists from 50 countries around the globe. You can explore their programming and collection over at artemisia.com. So please subscribe to and share this podcast, and we hope you enjoy this conversation between Mark Whalen and Radio Juxtapoz host Evan Pricco. Over to them.
Cool, man.
We did it.
We did it.
We did it. I'm tired. Wrong with that hill. Does that mean I'm out of shape from walking?
No, I think that's a big hill. I play tennis a lot and I struggle on that hill every day getting coffee.
I didn't mention this at lunch, but I just discovered, I'm going to say it wrong, Tim Tams?
Tim Tams.
Tim Tams.
Yeah, Tim Tams are great.
Okay, we just bought them the other day.
Okay, so you're new to Tim Tams.
Yeah, so is that just like a very is that the most typical Australian snack you could possibly?
Yeah,
biscuit, a biscuit. Is that what they are? Biscuits?
Yeah, it's a biscuit, chocolate biscuit. I guess there's so many flavors now, but yeah, I would say that's one of Australia's best exports.
Besides you?
Maybe. Tim Tam's a good one. I don't know if we can ever. One of the best biscuits in the world, I think.
Okay. I'm glad you said it because reason why I brought it up is what are some things that you miss about Australia that you can't get here or that's hard to get here that you sometimes go, oh man, I really wish I could get a Tim Tam. Tim Tam?
Tim Tam, yeah. Tim Tams you can get them here now, so that's cool. But yeah, Tim Tams that's a good thing. I should probably eat more of those, but I don't. But
it's a tennis.
Yeah. Meat pie, that's probably like a stereotypical Australian thing, but every now and then you just feel like a meat pie. That's something that's tough to get here.
There's not like a restaurant that it's like, oh, we have meat pies. It's like a really...
Yeah, it's just like an Aussie... I don't even know if it's truly like Australian. Maybe we stole it from New Zealand or England or something.
It seems like a Commonwealth snack.
Yeah, definitely a Commonwealth thing. But like Australia's got good ones. Yeah, I wish there were more of them here.
I have failed to introduce you. This is Mark Whalen, Australian-born, Los Angeles-based. I'm going to say sculpturist.
Yeah.
Is that okay?
Sure.
Sculpture artist.
Yeah.
Because I feel like that is something that you're emphasizing that you are a sculpture artist.
Yep.
We haven't had a ton of like sculpture artists on the podcast. This is quite nice.
Right. Nice.
So we're in a rare, you and Erwin Worm, we're in rarefied air here right now.
There you go.
Yeah.
It's good company.
It's great company. Yeah. So but I definitely want to start with, so we have to start with, because it's obviously something that needs to be discussed, that you lost your house in the Eaton fires, which for people that are not in Los Angeles, that's the Altadena fire. That's the identifier that people would probably recognize it through. Yeah. So maybe you could just, in the last couple of months, like we're obviously in an apartment that you're renting out. Thank God that you've got a place to live. Your studio is still around. But how has it been the last couple of months, just to give everyone kind of a background of
I mean, like it's been crazy. I guess 1 minute life is just going as is, and then the next minute, like the entire neighborhood's like burning down. It's a crazy experience. I can't say I ever want to do it again, but it was just like a really quick thing. It just happened, like click of the fingers. Like we were at the house. My wife, Kimberly, we had a studio like office at the house too. So we were there like quite a lot. My friend, Cleon Peterson, he texts me. So many artists were over in Altadena. He like texts me at 6 o'clock, like running in to grab my stuff real quick. Like the neighborhood's like burning down. I was like, do you want me to come over? Like, I'll come help. He's no, like we're getting out of here. Like literally the neighborhood's burning down. I think he could run in and he grabbed his dog and got out of there. And then we just watched it. For us, slowly came over to us. Like it took 12 hours, but yeah, eventually it just took the whole neighborhood out.
Does it give you, it gave many of us the perspective of how many actually artists were living in Altadena and like the art community that was in Altadena, and obviously just the history of Altadena as a place for first time home buyers back in the 50s, 60s and 70s. Like it's such a vital part of Los Angeles. Were you even aware of like how much that community represented the greater Los Angeles area at the time, or is it now?
Yeah, I think I knew there were a lot of artists in Altadena, and I knew a handful of artists, but even for me, I was there for 2 years and I didn't realize like how many artists were actually there. So there's quite a lot. You're like, oh shit, that person's there.
Yeah.
This person's there. And the list just kept growing.
Yeah.
And yeah, I guess I didn't really realize how many people were actually there. And there's Paul McCarthy's video studio was like down the street from my house. And then obviously there's a bunch of other friends in the neighborhood, but unknown like contemporary artists like living over there.
Right. I think it was also a really big emphasis for many people that how many artists just live in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
And how much the city has become a haven for artists in the last 15 to 20 years, which you are part of that group of people who've come here to make it home.
Yeah. I think, there's so many artists living in LA, period. It's just such a big place. I think everyone just can hide away pretty much. Yeah. So like,
except on a Friday afternoon in Silver Lake when I realized there's so many people. Like,
I haven't heard one story where they didn't lose all their stuff.
Right.
Like it's like almost every single person lost their studio, property, or whatever, like the whole thing.
Was there, at what point do you start thinking about your art life after losing a house? Did you find yourself like, I'm going to go to the studio and make work now? Or has it taken you a while to be like, I'm thinking about my art career again?
I don't know if I'd like thinking about my art career again, but it's actually, I opened a project in LA during Freeze. Thankfully, a good percentage of that was already done. So like, I wasn't like, it was still rushing to get it over the line, but yeah, the last couple months you just checked out for sure. And you're just dealing with crazy stuff like insurance and rebuilding houses. And
right. Things that you'd never, not that you didn't ever think you'd have to deal with, but things that you really didn't think you had to deal with.
Yeah. I guess you come to all these realizations after we went through something like this, I was like, damn, like nothing's permanent. You think things might be permanent. And for the most part, things like that are. Who thought that would go down? Even our insurance person was like, hey, I just Googled your address. I can't believe the fire even made it to your house. Like, they were just in shock that it is what it is, I guess, at the end of the day. You just it's just what's going on with us right now.
I think talking about permanence is important in talking about what you do as a sculpture artist. The fact that you are not somebody who rests on materials, like you try different materials, you do different things, you try different methods. Like what you're doing with sculpture feels quite fresh, feels quite new, feels original. What are you thinking about permanence now as a sculpture artist? Do you, just in the back of your mind, knowing that the natural world, there's an impermanence, but you're creating works that you're almost trying to make permanent regardless of the natural world. Like maybe talk a little bit about, has anything changed? Are we too early right now?
No, nothing's changed with that. I think when I make sculpture, you definitely have this permanent intention. Like I think it's built into the nature of the work. You're investing all this material and time into the specific thing. The process of going over this and like a lot of it, there's a permanency to it that's just, I think, a part of the process. So yeah, none of that has changed. I've always, if a fire doesn't like burn those pieces down, then we're all good.
I like that you call yourself a sculpture artist and you're not an artist who's just like, I dabble in sculpture on the side of the paintings, or I like sculpture is second. Sculpture is first for you.
Yeah.
But that was a build-up.
Yeah, it was a build-up, but it didn't happen overnight. It's a long kind of learning curve, I think, when you make sculpture. There's just so many mistakes that can go down. Like for me, I painted a lot before I decided I wanted to make sculpture. As time goes on, obviously you get more educated and more kind of versed into what that looks like. So it's something that kind of builds up over a long period of time. Your skill sets get better. Right. Your like awareness of what you can do obviously grows. To get to those points, even my first sculptures were really simple compared to what they are now.
Right.
And I think only with time you really immerse yourself in what it could be.
We'll go back to the origins of making sculptures, but what do you find that you can do with sculpture that speaks to like with the language that you want to speak? Why does sculpture work for you?
I think for me, I've always been like into the figure. I've always painted about the figure. That kind of just naturally moved into making sculpture for me. But I was just always interested in the narrative and like creating a narrative with sculpture. and like what I could do there. Obviously it's figurative based pieces. That's just always just been something that I'm just naturally drawn to. So I've just used that as like the base of my work, just to play around with what interests me. I don't know. Sculpture's environmental. I like to play around with those environments and what's happening, you know.
When we were having lunch and we were talking about your first foray into doing like a full sculpture show, you said it was at Richard Heller.
Yeah, I did. I showed my first pieces with Richard.
How long do you think it's taken? Because I think Mark Whalen, I think sculpture artist, but like, how long did it take people to identify you as sculpture, you think?
I think maybe it's probably taken a little while. And then I think like people that have followed my career, maybe they probably more know me as a painter. Nixed it out of my kind of whole practice, I guess you would say. So it was almost like starting again, maybe.
But that was a natural nix, you were saying.
Yeah, I just
natural in the fact that you, I've had enough.
Yeah, I had enough. I made paintings for a long time. I just had enough of it, and for me personally, it was I'm either making sculpture or I'm just not going to make anything. And I just made that kind of decision for myself, and I just went all in on that and just like really pushed it as far as I can push it.
Sydney, mark of 25 years ago.
Yep.
Did you have any inkling that, first off, did you know what you wanted to be, and did it take a while to get to that point? And did you ever think that it was possible? Because I feel like a lot of artists at a young age don't realize it's possible to make a pivot in their mid-career to, I'm going to do sculpture now. And actually really, not only am I going to do it, I'm going to invest in it. I'm going to do it. I'm going to change my practice. I'm going to do this thing. Did you, before you came to the United States, did you think I could be anything I want to be? Or was there a lot of trial and error getting there?
I always loved sculpture. I don't know if I ever really knew then that I would be be a sculptor and actually make a career out of it
and have a studio with it as the
like have a studio with like literally everything. It's always like it was like an afterthought. Like I was just like a big fan of sculpture and loved researching into that, but never really thought, like I'm gonna go after that one day. But I think you can. I think you just gotta, like you said, you got to invest in yourself if you want to do something. I think that's important. For me, I'm just like, maybe I have that obsessive kind of nature where I'm just all in with stuff. So if I go in, I'm like all the way in.
Right.
I'll push it as far as I can possibly push it. Maybe that drove me to get it to where it is. I think that goes with anything though, right? I think you gotta commit to yourself.
Yeah. I was thinking, does it help being in a place like Los Angeles where there's like film work and there is like this sort of ability to make 3D and to make like installations come to life that sort of influenced maybe thinking about or even knowing there's a possibility to have a sculpture studio here? Or is that not even in your lane at all?
I've never really paid attention to that industry. I've always been aware of technology and like what you could do. When I was first making my pieces, I would just go and get like real object sand cast, or like it starts at a place where you're like, okay, cool, I want to cast this thing, and I'd go get it sand cast in aluminum, and I would do this and I would do that, and then now I need a mold, I need to make molds, and as you go, you just start realizing like all the stuff you actually need to make what you want to make.
Yeah. Did you realize? We were saying, did you realize? I could have just stayed with oil paint.
Yeah, I should have just kept making paintings. You open up this huge bag of worms. You're like, damn, now to what I really want to make is this, and I need all these things over here. I'm like I get bored really easy also, I think. Yeah. And I'm always curious on like how to play around with new things. Yeah, maybe that's not the best like kind of personality trait to have, but it's probably helped me like grow the studio really quickly, and maybe in that sense. Yeah,
but like, what is something, for an example, what is something like 10 years ago you couldn't make that you can make now?
Yeah, I mean,
without even second thinking it. You're like,
like all the technology changes all the time. So it's like to get something 3D printed back then was like wildly expensive.
Yeah.
I didn't even do it. I made like the heads for my sculpture out of clay and carve that out of clay, because that would be the cheapest kind of option. Whereas like a 3D print of an object, it'd be like $2,000. But as time's gone on, it's all these different things are accessible and technology gets like cheaper. It's like widely
More accessible.
used. But yeah, I would say like 8 years ago, being a sculptor, like we're dealing with a lot of that. You're like, damn, like maybe I just actually can't make all those things because it's just too expensive.
Richard Heller Gallery, just showing sculptures for the first time, and the reaction you were getting from people, even the reaction you were getting from your peers. Did you feel in the moment, I think I've found the voice I've been looking for?
Yeah, I think for me, when I started making sculpture, the response was like really received and things rapidly moved, I think, after doing that like a handful of times. And then it just opened up doors to explore more things. Organically happen that way, and you know, sell a bunch of sculptures, and then you have financing to maybe make some other things. And then one thing kept turning into another, and that's how I grew the studio. But yeah, it was very much from the ground up approach.
As the world and art fairs all started pivoting towards painting again, like we're big, like every booth was just like, we're having figurative paintings. Like we're just gonna, every gallery, we're just going to go to figurative painting. I just decided I didn't want to do that anymore. Now it seems you're ahead of the curve. But there was a moment there, even during the pandemic, where it felt like the curve was like just painting. Did you go, I have to go back, get into painting, or you're like, I've done the right thing?
Yeah, for me, I'm just doing what I think is good for me. Like that's what I want to do. And yeah, I think maybe it took me a while to find like what direction I wanted to go with my work. So maybe I already did that and I've landed where I'm at now.
Yeah.
But maybe before that, I wasn't really like ultimately doing what I wanted to do.
What are the works?
What are the works?
What are they? What are you? I had this theory about, especially the recent stuff, that it felt 3D and physical depiction of memory.
Right.
And the absurdity of how we remember things, and just the crazy things that come into your mind when you remember things. And especially the totem, like this, it felt like the stacking of all these different thoughts and feelings all in kind of it's an absurd sculpture. It's amazing. It's funny, which I believe that you also are okay with it being humorous.
Yeah, I play around with a lot of different things in the work. It's like my interpretation of what's going on out there in the world. Like it's all figurative, so I like to play with scenarios or things that we can relate to that we do experience all the time. I like to pull that into sculpture and comment on specific things,
right?
Whether it's like maybe mannerisms that people do that we're like used to seeing, or maybe it's this kind of, maybe it was like driven off a meme, or some kind of like common interaction we have with objects, and make a sculpture out of things that I absorb. And they've got a quirkiness to them, and they have a bit of like strangeness to them. It's
Absolutely.
I like to play around with the everyday like that and make something permanent out of a moment maybe that we might resonate with.
And I feel like even earlier at lunch when we were talking about the current political climate, we were talking more about the like absurdity question, not specifics about what was happening, but the actual feeling that it evokes. And I think that speaks really well about what your work is. It's not like specific things. It's about this greater ethereal thing that comes from specific events.
Right. With those pieces, I obviously there's in some of the pieces, it might have a more specific narrative going on there. Maybe it's like a bit more abstract, and there's several narratives that you could pull out of the piece. But the kind of idea that I like to play around with in the work is that it makes you feel some kind of way. It makes you feel maybe you relate to it, maybe you relate to something else. But I think life in general is just totally, we live in a really weird place. Life it's full of surprises. So I like to make sculpture about that.
And it's also, we're living in a time of dueling absurdities. Like, it just feels like there's no like reality to grab hold of anymore. And that seems to be a place where your work seems to be also be coming from that. It's like you're making a permanent statement in a non-permanent world.
Yeah, pretty much. There's an uncertainty like in the narrative of the works.
Yeah.
There's a lot of different things, I think, all the time. Try to consider the work like that, and people interact back with the pieces like that. And
yeah,
I think it's interesting to play around with human things and everything that comes with that. different things going on out there that you can make sculpture about.
Do you think art could relax a little, be funnier? Not, and I don't mean like less serious,
Right.
but that we can inject humor, make people laugh, but also be serious at the same time. It feels like we got away with that for a second.
I think you can do both. I try to have both in my work. I try to maybe some pieces are a bit more humorous. Maybe there's a little bit of darkness to them.
Yeah. I think your work's quite dark, to be honest.
Yeah.
Is that
Sometimes.
fair? I think there's sometimes I'm like, oh yeah,
There's some darkness.
There's some darkness in there for sure.
I think if there wasn't like a mix of everything, then I wouldn't really be truly playing around with what we're talking about. So
Right.
I think like life is full of a mix of different things, and I try to play around with all of it.
What was the break? What was like a sculptural breakthrough for you? And what does that look like? Because I understand when we've had people on the podcast before and they talk about like a painting breakthrough, I can understand it. But a sculptural breakthrough, I think, is something we have never asked anyone about. Was it access to materials? Was it
I think
a figure that you made? You're like, you know what? This is actually, I think I figured something out. What is the breakthrough when it comes to sculpture?
I think for me, breakthrough in sculpture is like getting to the place I can kind of just make whatever I want. That was a breakthrough for me.
Does that mean for yourself, or does that mean for the audience, or is it both?
It's, I think, a mix of everything, but just for me, in terms of if I have a concept and I want to like actually make that into a sculpture, I actually do know how to make that.
Yeah, that's good.
Oh, like I'm sitting there like, how do I do this? Or how do I go get this over here? And it took me a long time to get to that place.
Mm-hmm.
But I think actually now when I make sculpture, like you just build this knowledge where it's nice to have that kind of moment of, I know how to make that and I know how to make this, and I can bring it all into the work. And there's like a freedom there with the work, which like personally is fun for me. Yeah.
But that took a while to get to that point.
Yeah, I would say years. A lot of mistakes, a lot of like research, things not working out.
What is a mistake? I think you mentioned mistake earlier, but I actually want to know, like, what is an actual? Is it just like something not lasting? Is it something not holding up? Is it?
Yeah, I think when you make, like, for me, everything in the work is like seamless. There's no like tape lines anywhere.
Yeah,
they're
right.
all separate objects that like
have to
fit together and engineered together. Figuring that out along the way, there's definitely been some mistakes. It's impossible not to. I think you just go through the woes of sculpture. Like I got this amazing piece of glass thrown and I had it setting into a piece of marble. This is recently too, which I don't really make that many mistakes on the work anymore, but it just completely fell off the piece and shattered. And you're just like, damn. Like,
you're like, okay, so this is like, but then so you have to go back to the drawing board and learn how to make the thing you want to make.
Totally. That's just like something that it's like, you can't go through those things. Like,
well,
you gotta figure that out.
Oh yeah. Okay. So you have a show in May at Harper's in New York. So when you are going to have a show, when it's not just like a body of work that you're making that might go out in separate group things or whatever, when you're going to do a show, what's a problem that you give yourself that you want to solve?
A problem that I give myself that I want to solve. I think anytime if it's a new concept and it's like things I haven't worked with, usually I'm working with this in advance, and like that's what you have this type of equipment at the studio for, to prototype. And if I'm making a piece, like it's already worked.
What are the common materials that you're using? Let's just, what are some materials that you're always using in the studio, no matter what a show is, or no matter what?
Like aluminum, bronze.
Okay.
Like I've been using a lot of glass. Been working with onyx stone a lot. It just I changed the materials like a lot. It just depends on the piece. It's if you're making a certain piece and then I feel like it needs to have this kind of like combination of materials, then I'll go over here if it's just what I feel, what fits at the time. I want
to just make sure that everyone's aware that when you're saying this, you're this very casual look on your face. And I'm sitting here thinking, just like casually, these materials, I feel like these are things that like are not easy to build with. Even though I know artists build with it, but they're not easy things to...
For sure. Yeah, none of it's easy.
But you seem casual.
Yeah. I try to just be as casual as I can. Okay. I think that's just me by nature, but... Yeah, there's definitely been a lot of stresses along the way.
Okay.
You know?
Yeah,
I've broken some marble. I've
there we go. I want to
smashed some metal. Sometimes you like color works and it all looks good on paper, and I just hate the color play. And so then I'm like getting it stripped back, and we like recolor the entire thing.
Right. So this is what I was getting at with the question about the heartburst thing. Do you have a certain like colors that you want to explore and color combinations you want to explore? Does it start with color first, or does it start with shape first? Does it start with concept? How does it work?
It all starts with drawing. I do a lot of really fast, like quick drawings.
Okay.
I think I have a lot of ideas and I just make a lot of notes. Then I'll play with a lot of really fast, like really small drawings, and I just draw them all out. And it's like this big process of drawing and thinking about the materials and maybe how I would do it. And
the drawings in conversation with each other? Is that where the narrative starts?
Yeah, I usually try and have them all have a conversation together.
Yeah.
And then, I think I write a lot of notes about materials and color, and eventually just land on like a series maybe, or some pieces I want to make. Then it's this whole process of getting the 3D drawings made, and you got to do the engineering on it and make sure it's all going to like work and fit. And
right.
Then there's like prototyping, like 3D printing.
So it's trial and error research after the drawings.
Totally. Yeah, then like 3D printing the piece, and they're kind of dry fitted on a 3D print. And there's just like all these little things to consider, and then if it's looking good, then I'll make the real thing.
What stage are you at? The show opens in May. So
May? I think it's May 15.
So what stage are you at right now?
It's at the stage where probably like towards the end of body work in the metal, making sure specific things fit, working on the glass elements that are going in there. And I would say it's like steering towards like the end of getting it all together.
Did this show ever become influenced by what happened in January, or was it and then also if it started before, obviously the show probably started before, did it pivot? And how do you not have it pivot a little bit?
It's interesting, actually. I think the narrative of the pieces in his show, it's definitely like exploring these kind of emotions of like a more uplifting, like celebratory kind of narrative, I guess, in some of the pieces.
Oh, wow.
So I'm going like it's made me like,
the opposite.
Feel like the opposite of what has happened.
Yeah, or the opposite of the world in general.
Yeah, there's just so many crazy things. I'm like, I want to play around with these like ideas of like human emotions that are like celebrating something, or I'm like looking into like different like kind of emotions like that for the show. So it's I would say it's the opposite of a house burning down maybe.
So it's not I'm not gonna say it's a happy show, but it's almost figuring out how to get through these times.
Yeah, like I think like I don't think there's any use of sitting around and like crying about my house, you know what I mean? Sure, it's like stressful and upsetting and stuff at the start, but that's not going to get you your house back.
Right. Yeah.
So,
right.
like trying to, I don't know. There's some fun, like you got to try and look at the bright side, I think, in things. So it's what I'm like playing around with in his show.
Not to say that you would be otherwise, but do you think that what's happened so far in 2025 has become like reiterates, because you and I were talking about aging earlier, like reiterates being an adult?
Yeah.
Does that seem like I feel like when you were talking about, we're adults, because you and I both have been like in this art world thing for a long time. Obviously you're an artist, you make stuff. So but like, I feel like there's like, what you were talking about at lunch, like, it's fucking some adult shit, man.
Yeah, you get older, right? It's
weird how time works.
Yeah, I was like, I'm 42, you're 42.
43.
No,
so I'm in denial about 43. I thought I was 42 for a long time. And then I realized, I just had a birthday. So I'm 43. Yeah, but anyway, same thing.
Yeah, I don't know. It's, I guess it's definitely some adult stuff. It's like way different than when I knew you. I felt like I was a kid when I was like starting to make up. It's like so long ago.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's kind of funny.
It made sense to me when you mentioned about having success and also just spending some time in Mexico. And I actually find your work if I didn't know and taken out of context of knowing you and also knowing a little bit of your backstory, I your work reminds me of works that I see when I see really good stuff happening in Mexico, when I see really good stuff happening in different art markets that are not Los Angeles and New York. Like your work feels not of this place at the moment. It feels like it's its own thing. But you've had success in Mexico and you've had success going there. What is it about I See Connection? I want you to talk a little bit about why maybe people are identifying with your work there.
I just think, I think like Mexican culture really gravitates towards color. I think
they're really good with color.
Yeah, there's incredible architecture throughout Mexico City, and I think there's so much use of like bold color and the way that like they use it in architecture. It's just really there's like really intelligence there, and using very few colors, but the way they like work them into a lot of the buildings there, it's just something you see all over the city.
Yeah, it feels as if Mexican architects in particular don't shy away from doing some really interesting things.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think they're really like bold with it and they own it.
Yeah.
And like that's just like how they do it down there. I think maybe my work, like I play with a lot of color.
You're great with that. Yeah.
I think people gravitate maybe towards those elements in the work. And yeah, there's just, I don't know, maybe it's like there's just everyone like really celebrates each other down there. And maybe the narratives in the work relate to people in terms of things that everyone experienced. And figurative sculpture, I think's been a part of the history there for a really long time. There's a lot of big Mexican like sculptors that have been down there forever.
Yeah.
They're all making figurative work all the way back to even all the old like carvings, and there's like incredible history in sculpture in Mexico.
Do you feel more akin to or a relationship to architects?
I like architecture. I like researching it. I look at a lot of it. I think I have a relation to it with my work in terms of like, I like to make things that are for specific like environments or placements. I've been doing that a lot lately. And
yeah.
I think they go hand in hand with architecture. Maybe there's some things to be shared there.
You don't do additions.
Yeah, I don't really. I've
this
done
is
a few
something.
editions.
I think this is why I was thinking about architecture, because it's like you've done a few editions, but like your work, it's not like if you buy one of your works, it's not like you're like, I've got an edition at 10 that I'll.
Yeah,
they're
I rarely
unique.
have stuff like that floating around. I like to do them every now and then.
Yeah,
but I really don't do them that much. Maybe I've done 3 over 6-7 years or something. They're usually really small. There's 8 of them, or not even. Yeah, I like to make unique sculptures. I like each piece just to be what it's intended to be. And I just personally don't like to repeat it.
You were saying earlier, and for some reason, when you started making this list of people, I had forgot there's some really great sculpture artists, and especially who have paved the way for like stuff that you're doing. And both of us admire Erwin Wurm. But I guess you could talk about like where you got not inspiration from or influence from, but when you look at the landscape of sculpture, are you feeling like there's a healthy moment right now, or do you feel that it needs to get more attention, it needs to get more press? Because I feel like we don't cover enough sculpture, because I feel like maybe it's just because it replicates funny in images when you're like in a magazine. I don't know what it is, but we've always had a hard time telling our readers about sculpture in a way that we felt like we were authentically doing. And I don't know why that has been such a problem.
Right.
But there's so many great artists are doing sculpture.
Yeah, I think sculpture's got a lot of great attention at the moment. There's so many good sculptors out there. I would say I think it gets a lot of attention. I think there's a lot of like celebrated sculptors out there.
But why do you think people have a hard time why would the Juxtapoz audience, and this isn't a slight at our readership, but they've always, it's hard. Art sculpture is hard for me. I've heard that before.
I think sculpture, you're either maybe you're into it or you're like into it or you're not.
Yeah.
I think maybe there's still that whole, people love paintings. As some collectors, all they collect is sculpture.
Yeah.
Some people do a little bit of both.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's probably definitely a lot of collectors that just collect paintings and they like can't wrap their head around sculpture sometimes.
Objects having like these kind of like objects around them. Yeah.
Yeah, and then you get like there's other collectors that are like welcoming, like they're trying to like place all these sculptures in their collection. They consider that into their house. Or
Yeah.
they're like thinking about what they want to put there. But yeah, I don't know. I think it just comes down to whatever you're into.
What about contemporary Australian art? There's actually, we were talking about this. I love doing it. I love doing this to people who are listening to this. At lunch when you weren't there, we were talking about this, but we were talking about some great Australian artists and also but the difficulty, because this sounds like a weird thing in 2025, but because it's so far away, it's hard there's a lot of great galleries there. There's great museums there, but it feels like a lot of Australian artists leave to get a name and maybe they go back or whatever. But how do you feel about contemporary Australian art now?
I think there's so many amazing artists coming out of Australia, and there's a lot of good things going on down there. I think it's just like you said, it's so far away, and
which is crazy because we just Google things. But like,
you can Google it. I think maybe I don't know. I think lately, like the last handful of years, like Australian artists are like coming over here more, and it's like becoming more of a thing, whereas in the past, I don't think it was as common. It's a slow thing that's like gradually happening. But there's a lot of amazing artists in Australia that a lot of people don't even know exist. But there's great painters, sculptors down there for sure.
You grew up in Sydney, and Melbourne usually gets the most attention for the contemporary art scene, it seems.
I think Melbourne's probably like the main kind of the hub.
But like, what is the art scene like in Sydney? And like by the time you had left, like what was happening there?
It's pretty much similar to the States. It's its own thing. There's a lot of galleries doing exhibits all the time.
Yeah.
But I think years and years ago it was a bit more conservative than like other parts of the world, and it's like slowly catching up and like over time. But there's a lot of great artists that have come out of Australia.
Yeah, absolutely. In both music and visual arts.
Yeah, music too. There's a lot of good musicians for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a pretty interesting place down there in terms of contemporary art. We were talking about how like you don't even do a ton of shows in LA, but what did moving to LA afford you as an artist that you were hoping that it would afford you? And you're still here after 15 plus years. So what did coming to LA afford you? I just moved here a really long time ago, and just slowly, like, I moved here. I didn't know anyone when I moved here. I just moved here. I knew a few artists, and that was it.
Right.
It was like a really strange move to just go and do. And it took me like a good 3-4 years to really like figure out what's going on over here.
Did you think it through, or did you I'm just going to go and I'll work it out from there?
I think I was young enough then to I was just like, fuck it, I'm just going to go there.
Right.
And I just never left. I was very much like living my life really different then, and I was just winging it.
But you've seen it change.
Yeah, LA is an extremely different place than it was like 16 years ago.
Yeah.
It's changed like a lot. I guess just being around, there's a lot more galleries here. Compared to Australia, it's like drastically different. Like I don't think I could ever like have my studio in Australia. Like that would just be impossible to like do what I do and do it out of Australia. Would be like, I don't even know if it actually would be possible.
What? And that's just because the infrastructure, the arts wouldn't sustain it enough, and also shipping it to the rest of the world and all that kind of.
Yeah, maybe being in LA, it's like more accessible to everywhere else.
Yeah, right.
And yeah, I think it would just be hard to get marble and get it down to Australia, and marble, everything in Australia is just wildly expensive too. Like, it just wouldn't make sense.
As you've seen so much of the art world shift and change, and you've seen Los Angeles change, and you do a bunch of shows around the world. What are some of the things that have you excited?
Things that have excited?
Besides your show coming up.
Yeah, I think just making work makes me excited, like always having different exhibits going on, or I've been doing a lot of like larger kind of outdoor sculptural projects lately. That keeps me really interested. That's like an avenue that I've
Does that
getting
include the
into.
totem that you did for doing freeze? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, just making really like large scale things
Yeah.
and pieces. That's kind of kept me like really interested, and it's been like a really fun process. It's like something that I've wanted to build into for a long time. And
Public art, really.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think it just takes a long time to like get those things going.
Yeah.
But that's like I think like something that I'm super interested in at the moment.
Yeah, and that also that becomes another kind of conversation of permanence and industrial sort of strength and all those kind of things that we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
What, like you said, like you got the show coming up, and you're at like the tail end of it. What's coming up for the rest of the year? What are some Mark Whalen surprises that we might?
I'm making a few large scale sculptures at the moment. I'm making one that's going on this really crazy kind of like private property in Lebanon.
Whoa, crazy.
Yeah, it's like it's almost like a forest in a way.
Do you get to go?
I hope so. I should be cool. That'd be fun. I'd love to go. Yeah, I'm making that and larger pieces. I'm making like a large scale totem that's from Mexico. I have an exhibition coming up in Turkey in November.
Amazing. Okay. And where is that?
The gallery's called Seville Tomasi.
Yeah.
It'll be like a first show with them, but I've been working on a few projects with them lately, and then we've been like building into this solo show.
I think again, I feel like your work I find it amazing, and I don't want to take this the wrong way towards California, but it doesn't feel like art that's made in California. I don't know why. It feels like if I would see your work and someone said that you were an artist that was based somewhere else, anywhere but California, I would be, yeah, okay. It's amazing to me. Like I do feel like seeing your work in Mexico and in Turkey makes a ton of sense.
Yeah, I think certain work gravitates to certain places. It's like just does its own thing.
As we get towards the end here, what is the last thing in the studio that surprised you?
Last thing in the studio that surprised me. Damn. It was like, maybe this was like 2 years ago. This is just like a natural disaster thing. But we had a tornado in the car park. I don't know if you read about that. It was like 2 years ago.
I heard we had a tornado yesterday, to be honest. And
it was right outside the studio door. It was like I was looking at it. Our roller door was up, and I was just like, damn, that's like a proper tornado in the middle of Montebello in Los Angeles. Absolutely crazy. So I don't know. Maybe these weird situations happen with me.
I want to end on that, but I also feel like I want to ask another question after that tornado. I guess that could help you in developing public art if I can withstand a tornado.
There you go. Yeah.
What is something that you hope that you can work with for not necessarily for these next two shows, because I know you're probably already developing those, but is there materials that you know that are difficult to work with that you have an eye on that is something you want to develop with, or colors choices that you want to work with?
I've been exploring a lot of like glass pieces, which is like newish for me.
Yeah.
I've been bringing it in slowly to the works for a while now. I've been playing around with that process a lot, and I've been having a lot of fun with it. So
right.
Trying to just see what's possible with that and what I can do with that.
Do you ever have to do like the Anish Kapoor thing where you have to go to someone's house and clean it, or do anything that maintenance to the sculptures that
clean a sculpture? Yeah, we've definitely trying to think.
Do you have like a special like towel that comes in? It's the only towel that can clean a sculpture.
No special towel.
I don't know if Anish Kapoor has a special towel, but I like to think he has a special towel.
I'm sure he probably does. Yeah. Who knows? Yeah, they're actually, the way they're made, they're pretty easy to clean, because they're all the finishes on the pieces. It's like how you would paint a car. So you can throw a copy at it. And it just comes off. So I make the works with that in mind, that they're actually really easy to clean if you ever needed to clean it.
They are quite industrious then.
They are industrious. Yeah. You can put them outside and they can be in the rain and all the things.
Dude, I think you need to have something where if someone puts a fingerprint on it, you have to have a special person fly in to wipe off the fingerprint. Like someone's child puts like a fingerprint, you're like, we got to come in and fix this for you.
Yeah. You'd be surprised actually, like public wise on the sculptures, like people like to touch the sculptures.
Okay. So this is something, and I was talking to Nehemiah Cisneros the other day, and he worked at the Hammer Museum for a couple of years. And he said, the thing that I learned the most about working in museums is the amount of people that want to touch the art.
Yeah.
And I was helping with the show at Beyond the Streets, and we noticed like at the opening, people wanted to touch the art, the paintings. And for some reason, I just like didn't realize that was a thing, but that's a thing.
Yeah, I've had some pieces in some museum shows, and like it's been a lengthy show. And yeah, you can just tell, like I did get one piece back. We had to like really clean it up. It looked like it got manhandled a lot. There's so many fingerprints all over the piece.
I didn't realize that was a thing.
Yeah, I didn't realize it was a thing either until I had a few of these like kind of public pieces. I think people just want to touch things, right? It's like a natural kind of thing.
It's cool in a way.
I think it is. Like it doesn't bother me at all. I put a sculpture in the middle of Spain, like a large scale piece. It was like a year ago, and like they had security around it because there were so many kids and like people like just grabbing it and hanging off it or like trying to climb it after a couple drinks and I was like, man, that's funny. For me personally, I thought it was hilarious. But yeah, like, I think they had full-time security around this piece just to let people chill a little bit on the like the climbing kind of aspects.
I feel like you've made it in the world when you have security around your art.
Yeah. Who knows?
Okay, actually, let's end on this. If you could touch any artwork,
oh man, if I
what
could
would
touch
it be?
any artwork, I have no idea. I don't know, man. Let's touch the Mona Lisa. Just for a conversation's sake.
That is got so much bulletproof glass on it.
I know. We'd have to drill holes in the case in. I have no idea, actually. I just don't really have the urge to touch art.
Yeah. I don't know if this is contrarian or if this is not cool to say in the Juxtapoz world or whatever. I actually find the pomp and circumstance of the Mona Lisa really amazing and awesome. Like, I love that it's behind bulletproof glass. I love that there's so many people that are like taking iPhone photos. I find the whole thing great.
Yeah. It's like it's a crazy scene.
I like that stuff. I like art that is culturally larger than life.
Right. Yeah, that piece for sure.
Yeah. We were talking about the Guernica recently, and I find that just to be an amazing. I love that it exists. I love that it exists. And it doesn't move around. I love that it's like a holy site for people. I love Rothko chapels. I like all that stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's great.
So I think the message here is that if you can get a security guard around your work, it's a good sign.
Let's hope so.
Mark, thank you so much.
Thank you, my friend.